Hello, I'm Whalley, welcome to Lenscraft. Today's big news is that the Nik collection has finally been relaunched by DxO. Now DxO bought Nik from Google back in, I think it was November last year, and they've been promising a new release of it, and today that release is out. Here I am on the Nik Collection website, and you can buy the new release at the discounted price of $49.99, or if you're in sterling it's $39.99. Big question I suspect on everyone's mind, is it worth it? What I'm going to do today is take a look at the Nik collection, and I'm going to actually put it through its paces because I've purchased this, but I'm going to tell you why I've purchased it later on. If you want to try it out, it's well worth it. There's a free 30-day trial here. If you decide to buy it, what do you get? Well, you get all the original Nik Collection tools, which you can see here, and there's a few enhancements in here. So let's see what they do. First thing is fully support for Photoshop and Lightroom and Elements now. A lot of people complained that the support in the old collection had started to break as new versions had come out of that software. We've got new stability. Personally, I've never had a problem with stability for the Nik collection, and I've got to say I've had very little problem in terms of compatibility with Photoshop and Lightroom latest releases. There is now full support for the latest Mac OS system, and again I've not personally experienced any problems. And there's this thing here which is the DxO auto update engine now integrated. I suspect that's about new releases that they make in the future and how those will be updated into your software. Looking at this, there doesn't seem to be a lot of new development gone on into the system other than stability issues. Having purchased the new Nik collection by DxO, I've actually downloaded it and I've installed it onto my Windows machine. When you purchase it, you actually get both the Windows and the Mac version, and you can install it onto 3 machines or up to 3 machines. I'm starting off with my Windows machine. Now the installation was very clean. There was very little to actually select other than the destination of the software, and the whole thing seemed to finish quite cleanly. Now the first thing I noticed is I thought I'll have a look in Lightroom where I am now, and if I right click and click edit in, I was expecting to see some sort of difference with the old installation. When I look at this, I can see that I've got the old Analog Efex Pro, Analog Efex Pro 2, but then I'm starting to notice odd things. So I've got Blow Up 3 twice, which is strange. I've got black and white styler plugins, so these are other plugins that I've used in the past, and what I'm seeing is really old versions of them all of a sudden showing up. And if you come down here, you can see here's the latest On1 Effects 2018, but I'm also seeing the old Perfect suite, which was a very old version of On1, showing up now. This is quite interesting because I actually have been experiencing a lot of problems with On1 not actually launching properly from Photoshop and Lightroom, and I've been working with the On1 team to try to actually locate that. I've got to commend On1 because their support is absolutely excellent for this, but we couldn't get to the bottom of the problem, and we couldn't seem to remove old versions of the software that didn't show up anywhere but seemed to be in the registry. Now I've updated to the latest version of Nik, all of a sudden all these old versions that we've been trying to get rid of have shown up, so I'm wondering if somehow the installation has actually cleaned up a problem that was on my machine. What I'm going to do now is actually start to look at this image, and we're going to edit it in Nik. Now before I do any editing, I'm going to just change a couple of things in Lightroom, and the first thing I want to do is change the color profile. Now at the moment that's Adobe, so I'm going to change that now in the browser, and I've got a profile here that I created. So I shot this on a Fuji X-T2, and I've got a profile that I've created that I like as a good starting point. Next thing I'm going to do is clean up a spot that I've got somewhere around here on the Fuji, and I just go to visualize spots and I can see it there immediately, so I can just clean that up. And if we zoom in on that area, we can see it's very clean. Now I'm just going to make some final tonal adjustments in the basic tab, and for this I'm going to increase the exposure slightly. I'm going to just lighten those shadows, and I think I'm going to drop the highlights slightly. The scene at the time was quite blue, but we had a brilliant sunset in this location here that was coming through quite colourfully. At the moment I can't actually see that, so I'm hoping to bring it out further, but overall that's a reasonable starting point. I want to do the bulk of the work in the Nik collection. Now, rather than actually try to go into the individual Nik collections from here, I'm going to actually go over into Photoshop. Here we are then in Photoshop. First thing I want to point out is that you can see the Nik selective tool that a lot of people are very familiar with. And it looks identical to the original, so much so that I actually wondered, is this the original? Have the new filters actually installed? So I clicked on the selective tool up at the top, and immediately you can see Nik Collection by DxO, so I know I'm using the latest version of the filters. Let's get underway then, and we'll start some editing. And the first filter I want to use is Viveza, because I want to enhance this warm glow here in the image. Now, the loading of Viveza actually seems to be slightly faster than it used to be, so that's actually quite pleasing. Initially I thought, when I looked at this, oh, where's the warming filter gone on there? But I noticed that we've got the collapse all sliders down to the basic tonal sliders, or you can add in some additional warmth and colour enhancements, and I like to use the expanded version of the sliders. Now, the interface itself looks virtually identical to the original Nik Viveza 2, and the only difference that I can see at the moment is actually this Nik Collection by DxO, rather than having a different logo up there. Let's get underway then, and I'm going to apply first off a control point onto the warming filter, onto the warm area here, so I can select it. Now, one of the features of control points in Viveza has always been, if you hold down the control key and then move a control point around, you can actually see what's being selected, and fortunately that's still working. Now, that used to be a feature in a number of the other Nik Collection tools. I think over time what's happened is that feature has actually gone away from some of them. It's been lost. And I think that's because the people who were developing it originally didn't use common code libraries that were shared across all the tools. Let's now add some warmth into that area. And straight away we can see there the warming has been added, and because it's a control point, it's actually only warming slightly in these areas. If I come down here and actually turn the mask on, you can see that we are slightly lighter here. There's a bit of light coming in here, and that's actually showing where it's white that the effect is actually being applied. So that straight away is quite a nice effect. The other thing that I like to do is actually increase the contrast in some of these areas here very slightly. And that's just to make the hills stand out a little bit against the light background colour. We can compare that to the original, and that's actually quite a nice subtle adjustment. So I'm going to accept that now by clicking OK. Now, the next adjustment I want to apply, I'm going to use Efex Pro. Now, rather than starting it from the Nik selective tool, what I'm going to do is use it from the filters menu. Now, the reason I'm going to actually do that is because this was one of the bugs that actually crept into the system, and I want to make sure that I can still launch the filters effects from the filter menu, because in some instances people have had real problems with this. Okay, that's absolutely great. We can launch now from the filter menu. The other thing I'm noticing here is that my favourites, that I've marked some of these filters as favourites over on the left, are actually still marked as favourites, so it's clearly carried across the information from the previous version of the collection. And I'm going to start by applying the Pro contrast. And I really like the Pro Contrast, in particular the dynamic contrast. I'm going to use that now to add in a little bit more structure into these mountains and the waves. The next filter I'm going to add is one of the skylight filters. And the reason I want to add the skylight filter is it really gives a glowing effect to these mountains and this light. And I can make that quite strong, but I don't want it to affect the entire image. I definitely want it to affect this area here. And again, I'll resize this. Now, I'm holding down the control key and I'm not seeing any of the mask being shown. So that says to me that they've not used common control point code across the entire code base yet. But I can use this still, and I can use that to position the control point and size it properly. Now I'm going to duplicate the control point by holding down the Alt key, and let's make sure this works. And that's still working, and I'm going to drag that down here because I want to have a little bit of the light falling on here so that it's reflecting and showing the warmth there as well. And then we'll increase the strength, and we'll just hold the strength back very slightly here, and again the opacity here will reduce. And that's making quite a nice effect now on this area. The other thing I want to do is remove the effect from that area, but just have it slightly introduced by a low opacity. And again, I'm going to copy that now, and I'm going to move a control point over to this side so that we've got that effect as well there. And then I may just duplicate that and add it to there, but at a lower opacity. Compare that to the original. So that was the version that we came out of Viveza with, and that's the new version having applied the Color Efex Pro to it. So we can actually make quite a good adjustment using just those two filters, and that's actually looking quite nice as an image now. But I just want to try something else. I'm going to turn off the Color Efex Pro, and I'm going to actually use the filter a second time. So the first thing I notice is we've carried forward the Pro Contrast adjustment we used last time. That's exactly as Color Efex Pro used to work. I'm going to add in the filter again for the skylight. I'm going to strengthen that. I'm going to restrict where it applies to here. We'll copy it down as we did before. And that's quite a nice look there. We'll just so I've recreated what I created last time, and this time rather than clicking OK, I'm going to click brush. And what this will do is it will create a black mask and attach it to the layer, and it will enable the brush tools. So here you can see the tools in the selective panel, and the first thing I can do is now paint the effect in. Now there used to be a warning that popped up every time you tried to paint with the tools. And I'm going to start with an opacity here of around 60%, and I'm going to increase my brush size. It's quite a soft brush. I'm just going to use it to paint in this area. In the old version, if I was trying to do this, what you would be getting is an error popping up or a warning message popping up every time I tried to paint a keystroke, and it actually rendered it unusable. And actually that has created a really nice look in those areas very, very easily just with a mask. And we'll compare it to the other version that we've got. You can see there. So I can turn that off, turn the new version on, and I really like the new version with the restricted area. One other thing I really want to do now is just zoom in and look at what it's done to the actual image quality. Because one of the things that the filters certainly that we've been using there are quite notorious for is introducing or highlighting the grain and the noise in the image, and actually it has done that again here. Not so much further outside because we haven't got a problem there, but when you get down to these areas you can see that the very fine detail that was there previously, we'll turn that off, has actually been destroyed quite a bit by the adjustment. But that's as I would expect. I'm going to apply that change now, and to try to clean up a little bit and take some of that artifacting out, I'm going to use Dfine. Now Dfine will automatically try to decide how to reduce the noise, and it's sampling these areas here, and I like to add a few more samples to show where the noise is, and they always have to be in an area that's clear of detail. So at the moment you can see a side-by-side view here, and it's making a reasonable job of actually cleaning up that image. So I'm going to go over to reduce now, and this is the sort of base level noise reduction that's getting applied across the image. If it's too aggressive, it will actually destroy some of the detail. And the other thing I'm going to do is make sure that the edge preservation is on, and I'm going to set it to about 80%. The lot of the noise that I want to take out of the image is actually in this area here. So I'm going to apply to it a control point. Again, I'm going to hold down my key, my control key, and I can select. So that's actually showing me that's good. And now I've got an actual adjustment that I can apply into those areas. And that's making the area quite clean indeed. And I'm also going to apply a little bit more adjustment into this central area here, but not too much. And that is cleaning up the area a little bit. I don't want to put too much noise reduction in there because you don't tend to see that there's any noise reduction damage there, and I think this edge prevention here may be a little bit too high. That's actually looking much better now. It is very blurry, but then this was an image taken at a distance through a lot of atmospherics, and the idea here is not to get perfectly sharp loads of detail. It's more about colour and getting the image to look right to a viewer. So we'll accept that, and that's cleaned that up nicely. I'm going to fit it down to the screen, and we'll just finish off with a crop of the image, and I quite like that. And that's our image finished. So overall, when you look at the tools that you've got in the Nik selection by DxO, they are identical to the tools that we had in the Google Nik collection. What seems to have happened is they've cleaned up some of the bugs, they've standardized some of the functionality, and the other thing is it now works with the latest versions of Windows, the Mac operating system, and also the Adobe tools. So would you spend money on this? Well, if you've not got a problem with the software at the moment, then actually you're probably not going to gain anything from it. If though you were experiencing problems, then actually you can buy into something that appears to have fixed a lot of the issues and now has support as well from DxO. So why did I buy the software? Well, I actually had 3 reasons. The first one was I wanted to see some of the bugs tidied up that I was encountering when I was using the software, and I think that's happened. The second thing is, by buying into this latest version, which has got the updated code libraries in there, I've probably extended the life of the Nik collection as an editing tool for me, and that actually is great, and it's actually worth it. But the other reason is I wanted to support DxO. Now that may sound a bit silly. At the end of the day, companies, yes, they have to make money and they have to profit from us, but they also are trying to keep these tools going. They're trying to create them and enhance them, and that's something that I really want to see happen. The Nik collection was and is a great set of tools, but unless we go and buy it, then it's not going to survive. And that really is the reason why I've bought these tools. I'm hoping now that DxO will be able to enhance these tools further, and we'll start to see some new functionality and an improved interface coming out in the future. I'd really like to see them enhance some of the quality and address some of those quality issues you get when you use some of the filters. But for now, it's a good, usable piece of software. You'll need to make your own mind up whether or not you're willing to pay the price to go to the latest version. As I say, no new functionality, but a great deal of stability, and it looks like the life of Nik has been extended a little bit further. I hope you found this useful. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, share it with others, and please, if you haven't done so already, subscribe. I'll see you in the next episode.